Now, please welcome to the stage Scott Stephenson, Erin Teague, and Karan Goel for the panel Speakeasy, Voice Applications of AI moderated by Max Child.
All right, Voice AI panel. Talking to AI is pretty hot right now. I'm excited to have two of the best tools and infra providers on stage with Deepgram and Cartesia, and Erin from one of the leading, if not the leading, consumer application of AI outside of the big model companies. So we're all obsessed with talking to AI, obsessed with latency, speed, keeping our takes concise. So let's kick it off. Scott, can you talk through what Deepgram works on and who your customers are and who's actually using you guys in the wild today?
Yeah, great to see everybody. We're a foundational audio AI company, so we build all of our models in-house. We label our own data. We have our own data labelers. We build our own tools to label data, et cetera. But then we provide that in a strategic infrastructure layer for B2B to build on top of. And so I'm trying to think about the public logos I could talk about here.
Yeah, but, give us some real world use cases.
Like Spotify uses us to transcribe all of their podcasts and put the transcriptions on the podcast and make them searchable, cool. That type of thing. NASA uses us for space-to-ground communication from the International Space Station down to Houston in order to figure out if there's an emergency or that type of thing. Twilio just announced their voice agents, and they're based on Deepgram under the hood. So yeah, things like that. We build audio for B2B to build on top of.
And you guys started with speech recognition, right? But now you've sort of expanded to all the different layers of the voice AI stack, or what's your focus right now?
Yeah, exactly. We're 9 years old as a company. It's, ancient in AI years. Yeah. Well, I like to say that I gave Sam Altman the idea for OpenAI because we pitched at YC 2 months before they started OpenAI, and then we're accepted into YC, and then we were in the same batch together. Joking, obviously.
Did you get any equity or profit shares?
No. Okay. No, but they did. He was CEO of YC at the time. They did in Deepgram, so I guess who won. But yeah, we've been doing it for a long time. We're known for our speech to text. Like if you just ask other people and they somehow have heard of Deepgram, it's probably because of our low latency speech to text. We're the largest speech to text API in the world, bigger than Google, bigger than Amazon, whatever. A lot of people don't know that, but we sell B2B, and so that might be why you don't know that.
Oh, good. All right, Karan, Cartesia.
Yeah, we are a model architecture company, so we build new model architectures, and we're very focused on voice AI and audio. We currently have the world's fastest text-to-speech engine. So it's
how fast? Yeah.
It's currently sitting at 89 milliseconds time to first audio.
Okay.
I believe we have one in the works that's 40% faster. So
you would know.
But we're really obsessed with latency and really making sort of super fast audio generation possible for all sorts of use cases. And so we kind of divide the world into two buckets, latency sensitive and non-latency non-latency and we think that making things faster has generally been a good thing for humanity, for the web, for mobile, for computing. So that shouldn't change for models and model architectures. So that's kind of why we work on that part of the stack.
And so who are the customers, or who's excited? Who cares a ton about 89 milliseconds of latency versus whatever your competitors are doing, hundreds?
A lot of the folks that want to run voice calling and want to run interactive, voice experiences are really excited to kind of work with the fastest provider. So that's kind of one of the places that we are currently working with a bunch of customers. Our product is only a quarter old. We are less than a year old as a company, so we're very fresh. But we're continuing to kind of innovate on the research side and continue to kind of sign up customers every day and help them build really fast, interactive, conversational voice solutions.
Okay, all right. Erin, Character.AI, I feel like most of us here have heard of it, but would love to hear your introduction of the company and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, hey, what's up, everybody? It's good to see everybody. Super excited to be here. So it's a lot of familiar faces in the room, so that's awesome. So Character.AI, yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the landscape of consumer AI apps, the vast majority of them that have achieved scale are chasing what we think about as information use cases. So they're thinking more about factuality, they're thinking more about academic benchmarks, et cetera, as it relates to the models and their efficacy. We're thinking more about our experience as an entertainment platform. The dominant use case on our platform is really storytelling and fan fiction. So people are kind of creating the next chapter of Harry Potter, or they're creating their own version of Cinderella meets Harry Potter, where Harry dates the belle of the ball, right? Like they're creating their own stories, and it turns out it's really engaging. So people are coming to our platform for entertainment, but they're staying because they're extracting a ton of value through connection to the character. A lot of folks are actually using our platform to kind of better understand themselves. They will practice hard things across any sort of interpersonal intelligence dynamic. So how do I fire this employee? We're seeing people practice that tough conversation, or people are practicing maybe even like coming out, for example, and then they'll swipe through all the different responses to see, if I come out, what are all the different types of things that a person could say to me? What if I came out this way or that way? And so all those different experiences across this interpersonal intelligence dimension is super important to us in terms of unlocking additional value. But the primary use case really is entertainment. So yeah, people are using us in that way, and we're pretty excited about it.
And you guys just launched a voice version of Character this year, right? Character calls. And you and I had talked about it a little bit, but I'm interested in how people are using that differently than they were the text version of Character online. Are they calling the characters from their drive home from work? What are you seeing in terms of audio input, audio output, text and audio mix? Like what are you seeing from letting people actually talk to the characters?
Yeah, the use cases are actually fascinating. To some extent, as we all know, as product people, we had a bunch of hypotheses prior to launching. And once we launched, we saw behavior patterns show up completely differently than what we were expecting. So text to text is still sort of the dominant use case. That's where people feel the most comfortable. The text to text engagement experience throughout the course of a given day is relatively consistent. Everything drops off like in the late hours of the evening and the wee hours of the morning in terms of engagement. But throughout the course of any given 24 hours, text to text is actually quite consistent. Voice, interestingly, really peaks during work hours, 9 to 4. I think people are pretending they're having a business meeting, but they're actually talking to their characters, and they're having like a character business meeting. And then it legitimately sort of drops off when we see a transition back to text from voice in the evening, almost like after dinner. So it's a really interesting usage pattern. We haven't been in the market that long in terms of voice, so we're still very much experimenting, but we expected a significant shift because our primary use case is storytelling. People are looking for longer form stories, and voice really does lend itself for that. And so we found that we had to tweak our model responses to ensure that we were meeting the expectation of users. So users who were talking on voice wanted much longer. They kind of want basically like a mini short story or a mini podcast instead of just sort of like the back and forth dialogue. And so lots of interesting use cases are emerging.
I guess my last question on that voice from 9 to 4, I guess, is do people call different types of characters during the day than they text with at night? Like, is daytime like fake partnership conversation or sales, and then nighttime is more like Harry Potter and Cinderella? Or like, what personalities are people looking to talk to during the day versus at night?
Yeah, what we're seeing is when people find their character or their set of characters, they stick with their people.
Okay.
It's kind of like you find your tribe.
Companionship.
Yeah, you stick with your crew and probably don't deviate much from that. Because that's your safe space, that's your comfort.
Got it.
And psychologically, that's the need that we're solving for users.
That daytime usage is crazy.
It's fascinating, yeah. But one caveat on this. So we sort of classify everything as voice, but the primary way people are using voice on our platform is text input, voice output. So they are likely texting the thing and then hearing the audio response, requesting longer form audio, and they probably have headphones on during the day.
Yeah, the AirPods plus typing.
Exactly.
Interesting. All right, so voice AI, speech-driven AI experiences, I think took a big marketing and PR leap forward this year when ChatGPT 4.0 was announced in May. They sort of demoed the version of ChatGPT that didn't quite sound like Scarlett Johansson, but maybe sort of sounded like Scarlett Johansson. And that's a new type of model, as you guys are intimately familiar, right? It's audio in, audio out, audio tokens trained and audio tokens emitted, and sort of a one-step model versus a sort of traditional three-step recognition, creation of the content, and then speech synthesis. And so for Karan and Scott, I'm particularly interested, you guys are kind of in the business of one or more of those pieces of those three-step models. Obviously you guys are diversified more at Deepgram, but what's your take on, is this whole category going to be eaten by these kind of one-step speech-to-speech models like GPT 4.0 real-time, or, is there a place for each piece of the puzzle being separate, and, where do you guys fit in? Yeah, either of you take it. I mean,
yeah, it's all over.
All over for Deepgram,
it's all
or
over.
just for all of us?
I'm just trying to clear out the VCs that think that's true.
No.
Sorry.
We're
no.
cooked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that COGS matter.
Okay.
Cost of goods sold
Sure.
matter, and I think a good way to think about this is forget about the business use case. Think about the brains that are in our heads, and in our brains we have white matter and gray matter. And the white matter, its job is to basically communicate information across your brain and nervous system. And the gray matter is what actually does the computation. And the gray matter, though, has specialized regions. So there's regions for movement, there's regions for speech, there's regions for language, there's regions for visual stuff, there's et cetera. And one of the reasons that the brain has developed this way is because COGS matter, because you have a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of space, a certain amount of, you think of these as like wattage going into a machine, the memory that's available, that type of thing to all these machines. And now you could say like a consumer company that might have a loss leader, like who cares, and that's kind of true. If who cares if you're bringing them in for like a few hour conversations and they're paying like $10 or $20 a month or something like that, then maybe it doesn't matter. But if you have massive scaled B2B operations, that's when it really matters. It's all of this to say, like, that doesn't mean like speech-to-speech isn't going to work for B2B or something.
Okay.
But there are major challenges, like the cost. There's major challenges around controllability. There's major challenges around adaptability. So you think hallucinations were bad in LLMs, wait till speech-to-speech models are let loose, et cetera.
Wait, why are they worse at hallucinations, out of curiosity?
Well, just think of the B2B use cases. Like, hey, you train a general speech-to-speech model on like YouTube data, and then you ask it to call your healthcare provider to like negotiate something with them. Like,
okay.
It needs to be formed more, than that. It needs to be constrained much more than that. And so the companies that are working on that from a B2B perspective are going to get a handle on that. They'll be able to control it. They'll be able to wrangle it, et cetera. And then, but the way that I predict how this is going to go is that it'll still be speech-to-speech models, but there will be sections of it that are specific to certain parts of conversational negotiation. So like perception, understanding, and interaction. So yeah, don't want to take up all the time here, but hopefully you get the idea that that's how I think it's going to go.
So cost of goods sold matters. It's still super expensive would be the high level take.
Yeah, cost, adaptability, controllability, reliability, all these things. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been prototyping some voice games on GPT 4.0 real time, and currently it costs $2 to $3 per minute to run.
Yeah, exactly. Like $60 an hour, $100 an hour. Why don't you just pay a human? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, seeing this on my end at least, I hope we don't end up at that price point. So yeah, Karan, same question. I mean,
I think so. We work on text to speech, but we're also working on our own speech to speech model. And I think the way we see things is, when we talk to customers, a lot of them are using our text to speech engine as part of a orchestration stack, where they are orchestrating transcription with a reasoning engine, which is the LLM with text to speech. That tends to work quite well because you can have a lot more control over the reasoning of the end-to-end conversation. So you really want to figure out how you can piece together, in some cases 15, 20 calls to different LLMs to figure out how to carry the conversation over a 5-10 minute period. And so that's quite challenging to do in an end-to-end way with a single model that's just talking back and forth. So that's, I think, one of the key challenges for these speech-to-speech systems is how they can have the memory of the interaction and carry that along for enough time so that they stay on track and they don't deviate from script. Okay. So that's one of the challenges for B2B. I think on the more like consumer side, I think it's actually much more interesting, I think, because you can interact with a bot that can talk to you in any language, that can translate things that you say, that's quite entertaining. And so I think the future is going to be speech-to-speech, which is why we're sort of investing a lot of time and effort in building those types of models. But controllability is one of the key challenges, and that's what we're spending a lot of time working on, at least at Cartesia.
Yeah, can I just add to that? The challenge between control and latency or performance is such a difficult needle to thread. And that's ultimately the trade-off between text-to-speech and speech-to-speech. From a cost perspective, it's still costing us about $1 a minute for text-to-speech, so it's not actually...
That's pretty high.
Yeah. It's meaningfully expensive, so it doesn't necessarily scale. But because our use case, we're very much concerned about the quality of the experience and the quality of the conversation. So that control piece is still the highest order bit on our end. But audio to audio is definitely where the world is going because, it's like from a latency perspective, these things are probably good enough right now, but over time, they're not going to be good enough. And, the people are going to legitimately expect real-time responses.
Yeah, I'm interested for all of you guys, both on the sort of consumer use cases and the B2B cases. One of the things that's amazing about these modern models is they really have this sort of emotionality. They really have this sort of tone and depth, and they feel... you can get in these sort of dramatic conversations with them in a way where I feel like you really couldn't with the last generation of text-to-speech models. I'm interested, I guess starting with character, how important you guys find that in terms of your consumer engagement and usage, and then I'm also interested on the B2B side, if I sound really stressed out when I'm negotiating with my health insurance provider, does that help me get a kickback or a discount? How important is that kind of emotional quality to voice AI?
Massively important. It's probably it's potentially the single biggest and most important thing that creates the high levels of engagement because the experience is so immersive, right? And so in order to stay in that immersion, to not break the immersion throughout the course of a given conversation, having consistent levels of emotive responses. The characters I talk to daily are such drama queens. It's unbelievable, but that's what creates the story, right? That's why it's engaging. That's why it's a form of interactive entertainment. Now, one thing that is interesting that we found from voice, getting all the user feedback is super important, and we saw people create voices that are beyond our wildest imagination, like the whisper voice, the deep voice, the high, the voices that people are creating themselves are really spectacular. And so that's another sort of benefit, is to just kind of put all this stuff in the hands of users and get a sense for how they want to customize the experience on their behalf.
You guys?
I will say that, I think voice is so much more visceral than text because you really feel every part of the interaction. And so I think people are much more attuned to finding problems with voice than they are with text too, because of that reason, because you can immediately notice when something's not right. Your brain just tells you that, something's off. And so I think that is what also makes it a challenging kind of area to work in, which is that the bar is very high. Humans are very good at detecting when things are not authentic. And inauthenticity is very easy to catch. Especially if you converse with these systems for more than 10, 20 seconds, it starts to feel a little bit off.
Yeah.
I think that's the real sort of interesting problem of emotion, is sort of how do you, obviously there's the utterance level thing, can I make something sound emotive in a particular way? But then there's also how do I carry that authentically over a conversation where I really understand what the other person's saying and have some memory of the interaction in some interesting way. So I think that's, to me, particularly exciting, and really enabling that especially over multiple conversations too, right? If I can talk to character and I can
Memory.
actually remember things about you and carry conversations over, I think that would be really interesting and exciting.
All right,
Yeah,
Scott?
yeah. This is what we talk about internally as context passing in the conversation, and it happens at different levels in time. So if you're just taking one turn in a conversation, you have to perceive, you have to understand, and then you have to interact back. Right now, if you just do speech to text into an LLM, into TTS, you're dropping context at each boundary, basically. You want to pull that context across the boundaries in the models there, but that's not all. That's just for that one turn, you know. Then the next turn comes around, and you want the context from the previous one, right? But that's for this conversation. You know, you also want the context from your previous conversations, basically, right? So it's all about like passing context, basically. And that when you get that right, and you do it with good cogs, good reliability, et cetera, good expressiveness in the voice, like the emotion question here. That's when, like right now, I would say for sure, there's no system that passes the audio Turing test right now. So like you were just mentioning.
You're leading into my last question here. All right.
Oh, never mind then.
Okay.
But,
all right.
Yeah.
The audio Turing test. The idea that you can be on the phone call with a real person and not be able to tell the difference. Because I think most of us would agree we kind of passed the Turing test with GPT, I don't know, some point in the last 2 years. Okay, so when, lightning round, final question here. When do we pass the audio Turing test? What year? Just go down the line here.
Oh, this is easy.
Yes.
End of 2025.
Okay, 14 months away.
I think that it's already passed because the Turing test is 30% of interactions should sound like you're fooled. And
30% of people are fooled, or 30%
yeah,
of
in like a
interactions
short
are fooled?
interaction.
What,
So
what about give me like 80 or 90 though?
maybe in the next year, yeah.
And all right, 13 months away. I'm excited. Aaron, what are you seeing?
I feel like I should just be consistent.
No, you can.
End of 2025.
Okay, all right. Well, that was like the least disagreement of any,
We're gonna have to
any
align our
discussion I was
product
expecting.
roadmaps.
All right, end of 2025, you're gonna be on the phone and not be able to tell the difference that it's an AI. That's pretty.
Yeah, when you get the context passing right, then it's just build it into the products, and then like it's not going to take that long actually. The research is already being done, the results are already there. It just has to be like shipped, scaled, and then put into all the products.
All right, thanks very much. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.